Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ACPA Senior Scholar Grant Opportunity. We're going to talk about the call for proposals and share a bit about the grant. Before we do, I'd like to introduce myself and my colleague, and then also the people in the room, if that works well, and then we'll go to the agenda for today. My name is Penny Pasque. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a faculty member at The Ohio State University, where I'm a professor in educational studies in the Higher Ed and Student Affairs program. And I also am a director for the Qual Lab and director of qualitative research for the college.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. I am Jimena Zúñiga, a faculty member at UMass Amherst in the Social Justice Education program. And I'm glad to be here and thank you for joining.
For the people in the room, senior scholars and non, we'd love to have you introduce yourselves if you're able. John?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is John Mueller. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am recently retired from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and I serve as a member on the Senior Scholars.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Patton Davis, and I am a professor at The Ohio State University and a department chair, and happy to be with you all this afternoon, depending on where you are.
Hi, Julie Elkins. I'm from Southern New Hampshire University. I'm an academic partner and faculty member there in the higher education program with the Global Campus.
Flo, I don't know if you're able to. Yeah, nope. Okay, we can't hear you. But that's Flo Guido. She is a diplomate, and we're glad to have her here because she's also on the committee. So thank you for being here. Our time today together is going to be welcome and introductions, what we're doing right now, then our land acknowledgement. We're going to share a little bit about the Senior Scholars Program briefly, then talk about the strategic imperative on racial justice and decolonization. Then we're going to share a framework for research design, how you might pull these two together for the proposal for the Senior Scholars Grant. And then we're going to also offer a couple examples from the field, and then ask you to take action with your grant proposals and submit. We really want to see your proposals, so please send them on in, and we'll have lots of time for Q&A for the people who are able to be in the space today.
Yes, in the spirit of this webinar, we felt strongly about the need to start the program with a land acknowledgement. So I'm from UMass Amherst, as I said earlier. And I want to acknowledge that UMass was founded and built on unceded lands of the Poctomac Nation and on the land of the Norcota community. We begin with gratitude for nearby waters and lands, including the Kinnegad, the southern portion of what's called the Connecticut River. We recognize these lands and waters as important relations with which we are all interconnected and depend on sustained life and well-being. We feel like it's not only a matter of recognizing where we're standing, but also to make a call to action. And here are some examples where people who live in these lands can take action in the state of Massachusetts. So you can open that link if you can, Penny. And I think it's a good practice for us to always invite people to think about what they can do, not only stay in recognition mode.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thank you.
And we'll make sure to leave this PowerPoint on the website of ACPA so that people can access it themselves as well. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
The ACPA Senior Scholars is a group of fabulous colleagues that we all get to interact with regularly. We're accessible. We'll be at ACPA. We hope we see you. Come say hello. And the program was developed in 1984, and it really is about connecting scholarship and inquiry, advancing the field, and really being experts, but in community. We know everyone in the community has expertise in various ways, and so really take seriously the role of being senior scholar with you all. The Senior Scholar Initiatives, there's a few of them. We have a selection process for senior scholars and rotate in and out. We have an emerging scholar program with grants as well. And this is an award and a grant. We offer sessions at ACPA, so hope to see you there. We also have connections across the association. We serve on different committees and are visible in different ways. And sometimes that's behind the scenes as well. And then, of course, there's the Senior Scholar Grant Session, which we're in right now. A little bit about senior scholars and the proposal, because that's why you're watching this webinar right now and then you're engaged. The full call is on the ACPA website, right where we'll have the link for the video and the PowerPoint. But really, proposals will be judged on originality, feasibility, can this be done, clarity, potential institutional impact, and connection to the ACPA strategic imperative on racial justice and decolonization. That is key, and part of why we're actually doing this webinar, to just have a conversation about what does that mean. It sometimes could be a little harder than maybe it appears, because this is important work, really thoughtful and deep work. It's about action. And so that's a part of why we're having this session today. And then the final work belongs to you. Only ACPA members are, as the main PI, are able to apply for the grant. You have to be an ACPA member as the main PI. Your co-PIs could be at your institution, at other institutions, or not at, could be community members and not at institutions, but the primary PI is ACPA member. And then awards, who's not eligible: current ACPA, senior scholars, and emerging scholars. So if we're giving you the grant and the award for emerging scholars, that's fabulous. Take it, do that work. And then when you're done, come think about a grant. We're gonna give one or more grants up to $5,000. Here's a little bit about the timeline that's also in the proposal. And so we're doing the webinar now. Your proposals are due on a Friday, November 11th by 5 p.m. Pacific time. So it gives a little bit of a window. And then we're gonna have a committee, which is of emerging or of senior scholars and diplomates. We'll review all of them word for word and then have discussions about all the proposals and make sure that the announcement is provided the week of December 5th, sometime that week, working with ACPA. And the funding will be given to you by the end of the calendar year if you're selected. And a mid-year project is due to us, just to let us know what's happening and how you're doing with your research project. And then anybody who has finished will end up presenting at the ACPA convention. We host that. You don't have to worry about applying. We want to make sure that everybody who receives a grant is able to present their research so it's accessible to everyone.
So now we want to spend a few minutes providing some snapshots of the strategic imperative on racial justice and decolonization to provide you some guidance as you think about your proposals. So to start, and there's a link that you're going to put in the chat to the document, because it's a very important document, very, very substantive. There's a lot of interesting content. And, you know, right now we're discussing with my students in my class, and it's a very helpful framework to think about how to do the work and remind the work differently. So the next slide. So what's the impetus? What was the impetus? So this is important to highlight. Indeed, you know, the last 5-8 years, we have really faced a widening gap, many racial incidents, many opportunities to face how deep-rooted is racism in this country. And there's so many examples from the fact that so many trans people of color have been killed since 2017, particularly Black trans individuals. We have the George Floyd incidents. We have so many issues with the police. And also, we also know that increasingly the representation of students of color, particularly Black students and Native American students, have decreased in many higher education institutions. So we are really we really felt the need to center these issues in ECPA and develop a framework to help people guide the work. So with that said, the imperative follows, I would say, 6 important principles to guide the work. One is that all forms of oppressions are linked. So even though we're centering race and racial justice and decolonization, indeed, intersections of race, gender, class, sexuality, gender, religion, etc., are also part of the conversation. The fact that racism and it's such an enduring pattern in our society and in the world, really. So we have to find ways to struggle against it and transform it, that is systemic and not just interpersonal. And that colonization and racism are also impacting all of us in higher ed. I came from Chile. I received very European-centered education. Today we'll say a white supremacist education that was valued, came to the US, and the same thing was played out for me. So indeed, and I've been trained to be a colonizer. So I think that's really real. And how we interrupt that, how do we do that things differently in our research, in our relationships, in how we do the work, in how we recognize others, it's important.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And with this, it's about advocacy and social change. It requires us to dismantle racism and colonization in higher education. It's about that action piece and figuring out how to take action. And we'll talk in a minute about how we might do that with our research. And number 5, it requires collective education, research, and scholarship, advocacy, and capacity with positive change. We want to see change with our work. We also believe and hope for that we will grow, learn together, change together. We have to leave room for that growth and change. And it doesn't, we can't all know everything all the time. And so to give ourselves grace and make sure that we're always working on ourselves, growing ourselves, not leaving it to, as a white person, that I'm not always leaving it to racially minoritized people to be educating me, that I am taking action as an individual and I'm making change with the work as well. And you're doing this in community.
I thought it was helpful to share with you some of the questions guiding the imperative. I found some of these very powerful because it really asks very deep philosophical questions about what does it mean to be human. That's a really powerful question that we seldom ask in US higher education. And what defines humanhood? And how one proves humanhood to the oppressor? That's a big question. And I don't want to get into all the questions, but I think for me, one of the powers of this document and of the imperative is that it centers love at the center. So how can we center love in our relationships, in how we see each other, in how we do the work, in how we build community, how we develop solidarity across difference, and how we interrupt oppression and racial injustice, and how do we imagine something different? So some of the guiding principles of the imperative are responsibility and as beings and in action. So it is a very powerful statement. I will talk about in a few more minutes, that we should also question the knowledges we use. Indeed, ideally that we center subjugated knowledge. So we find ways to center knowledges that are hidden, that we haven't attended to. That we also center authentic relationships, agency, that we suspend efficiency, which is a big one, and embrace dialogue, and that we center compassion and healing. So these are really, really powerful principles in my view, even spiritual principles that can guide the work. And one of the ways the imperative help us think about is through this wheel that I find very helpful. Where the different dimensions of the imperative are really, I don't know, depicted in this wheel. That I think it's a helpful tool to help us think about how do I think about doing racial justice work and decolonize my research and what's my role as a researcher, from questioning the knowledge that we use, to emphasizing agency, to centering compassion, to see people always as becoming, including us as researcher, and how we educate people through problem solving and problem posing. So indeed, this is it's a little bit big, it's ambitious, and I think it's one step at a time. I think that's something to keep in mind.
I just paused it because I pushed a button because I was keeping it on the presenter mode, but now it won't let me go back to the slideshow mode. I keep pushing slideshow, and it's not working. It says resume slideshow and I'm pushing the button. What do you all see? You see all the slides, right?
Yeah, it's like the way when we were editing.
When we were editing, yeah, exactly. So could you all help me figure out what button I should be pushing? Slideshow from the current slide.
Yes.
And then I get this. I don't know what's happening.
Well, we should just go with this. It's okay.
Just go with this. Okay.
It's not terrible. It's fine. I think it's fine.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna.
So
Okay.
so I think I invite you to go to the document if you're not familiar with this document and to read it carefully. I do think it's a nice document to share with students and colleagues, and it provides a nice guiding framework. Yes. As we think about research, as we think about even classroom pedagogy, as we think about anything that we do. So now Penny's going to help us.
With the research design, we have a framework for thinking about the strategic imperative with qualitative research. And we thought that this might be helpful just in thinking about how to really put these together in an intentional way. So this is the standard 5 parts of a research design, and we know your decisions matter. Your decisions from the beginning to the end, right? Your problem statement, your purpose, your theoretical or conceptual framework should be all the way throughout. Your design, your research question, your analysis discussion, right? Here's the standard. I also am working on with Sage an actual book about qualitative research. So here's those 5 stages, but also built out a little bit more, thinking about trustworthiness on the side, and ontology, epistemology, axiology, praxeology, which is often in indigenous methodologies. For example, I'm thinking about Sean Wilson's work where it's a wheel. These are all connected, right? It's not just in isolation. And so thinking about our research design and all the different parts, how do we actually think about the strategic imperative throughout, where the strategic imperative is in your thought process at the beginning, in your lenses and approach. It's actually in your collection, in your analysis, your dissemination, so that these two are not necessarily side by side, but that instead these are very connected. You're blurring these and putting these together so that your entire research design is whether it's the whole wheel or a piece of 1 or 2 or 3 or all areas of the imperative, that it's connected together. So we thought it would be helpful to actually have examples. How do you embody this in a research design? So we are providing with you examples from the field. So when I think about research, I'm thinking about the who, the what am I researching, the how, the where to disseminate, how to include community members, participants with research questions. I'm thinking about all of that together. It's not just my topic. I'm using LACCRIT. for a theoretical framework. Oh, that's connected to the imperative. Or my topic. I'm working with lesbian women in a living learning program. All right, so this must be connected to the imperative. It's not just about your topic or a theoretical framework. It's about connecting all of these pieces throughout the design, thinking about how you do your research, your methods and your methodology all together. So again, we think examples are really helpful. And so with this, I offer Borderland Matisse Sahi Feminism, which is by Cynthia Saavedra and Ellen Neinmark. You can find the citation here, but a part of what they do is actually flip that design. Right? The design I just showed you, they start with the community. They actually connect with the community members. They think of BMF as actually uprooting dualistic thinking, right? That's a part of the imperative to really be critical consciousness is a part, and to actually, as researchers, employ that critical consciousness. It's embodied, right, with BFM. That's one of the principles. And one of our principles in the strategic imperative is humanization. So thinking about how that happens actually with these lines in between the theories and the methodologies and the methods, how it's a tool for collection and analysis, as well as the epistemology methodology altogether. So I think of this as a really good example. And while they actually might not necessarily use the language of the strategic imperative and that framework, it's thinking about what dimensions of the imperative are actually showing up in the research design that you're using. And I already talked about the humanization and the critical consciousness part, the love of body, love of self, right? And making that a bit explicit in your design, making sure that you're very explicit about where this imperative comes to life throughout your research design.
Good. And thank you, Penny. And and we spent some time thinking about possible examples, and we start looking at many examples. And the most obvious example would have been to pick a participatory research project that involves a community, or an author ethnography, whether collective or individual, where you are really working with yourself or others in a very reciprocal way. But we decided to look for something else that was more realistic. And what happens here? Go back to this. Yeah, that's
yes. Huh.
This piece is in a special issue that Stephanie Waterman and the L. Stewart did in 2020. It's a very powerful piece that I really recommend everyone to read it with care. It's a beautiful, loving piece by Christina Morton, Recentering the Spirit, a spiritual Black feminist take on cultivating right relationships in qualitative research. It's a beautiful piece for a lot of reasons. One, indeed, Christina was an undergrad student in engineering, pursued a career in higher education, and wanted to understand more what the experience of Black women in engineering was. So she started a study to interview people like her. I think she interviewed, can't remember, maybe 18 women of different ethnic African backgrounds. So really, I think the global people from Africa and the Caribbean and the US were in her group. But what I found very, very touching was that she really was, her goal was to invite conversation about how a faith-guided, a spiritual guided, faith-guided educational experience play out for Black women in engineering. So she used Black feminist thought and darkened feminist epistemologies to look at the experience, and interviewed 16 Black women, and she interviewed them like 3-4 times. She did a total of 48 interviews, and she really developed a very dialogical way of interviewing. So every meeting was a very deep conversation about what it was like to be a Black woman in engineering. And I was really struck by her coding approach, because she her codes, the codes that she developed to analyze the data were codes where in dialogue with these women, there was a shared experience or shared validation of something. So that became a code. So every moment there was a co-experience of something that was validated by the conversation became a code. And she also coded for every instance of compassion, love, reciprocity that was expressed in the interview. So it was very, very relational and very where emotions and were centered as well as relationships. And, you know, her goal was really to develop a process that was humanizing and healing for all 18, 19 people in this experience. But what really struck me was the fact that for me and Penny was that this was a 6-month project and she had 48 interviews. So she met with them 48 times with these 16 women or with different women. So I think for me, this is an example because on the one hand, she's questioning, hegemony. She's using powerful frameworks, not only Hill Collins, who is a sociologist, and we all know, but also Dillard. Dillard is bringing a very interesting way of thinking about Black women experience that is really anchored in criticality, but also in Christian faith and love and care. So it's a very different ways of framing the question. And then I think she's also really focused on developing good, authentic relationships, compassion and healing, and raising questions to these 16 women. So we thought this was a very nice example of what we're trying to do here. We would like to invite you to consider as a possible pathway. So yeah. So what are some of the dimensions of the design, the wheel that are showing up in the design, in my view, in the center of spirituality in Black women's lives? I thought we don't often see that in the academy. Reimagining the research participant relationship. So she's not extracting knowledge, she's really spending time having at least three sets of interviews, and invite them to do reflection papers, I think journaling, pictures, really trying a very holistic, humanistic approach to the research, and embracing dialogue, love, compassion, and reciprocity. So to me, those are at least three very important dimensions that she's highlighting. There were other examples that we can share with you, or we can put in the chat, that I think are also good examples of possible ways that mirror some of the values and dimensions highlighted in the imperative. In case you would like to hear those, we can share those in the chat. So we have talked a lot. We felt compelled to cover some of all these topics. So I think what we'll do now is invite you to raise questions on how do we think about applying some of these ideas to a proposal and to a grant proposal.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you for bearing with me with why this won't actually go up, but I appreciate that. And now we really want to also give a shout out to Stephanie Waterman, who the two of us worked on an ACPA Go with the senior scholars previously, and some of this work we had presented at ACPA in the past. So shout out to her. And Reginald, welcome. We're so glad you're here. We did introductions at the beginning. Julie, we're glad you're here. John, Flo. Flo is a diplomat. John, Jimena, and I are senior scholars. It's good to be in space with you. What questions do you have? What conversation? We just meant to really have this as a dialogue, and this is still recording and will be up on the website for people to watch. So your questions might also be their questions.
Hi, good afternoon. And sorry, I was running a little bit behind, missed introductions. My name is Reginald Blockett. Reggie is fine, and I do open and flexible pronouns. This was a great presentation. I really appreciated the connections and the thoughtfulness that you all put into how to make sure that this proposal sort of speaks to and really responds to the significance around a strategic plan, the strategic imperative. One of the things that I'm thinking about is, so you only get, I want to say that I looked at the material there online. I want to say it's like 3 pages for the narrative.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Okay. And that would include the significance portion that's making that connection to the strategic imperative. I guess my question is, when I'm thinking about drafting this proposal and trying to think about sort of space within that 3 pages, I know there's a little bit of a guideline there on the Senior Scholars website for the grant, but what would be an appropriate kind of layout in terms of communicating both the research project itself, but then also, making those very strong connections to the strategic framework. And, I guess I'm just kind of thinking about, just how to sort of mesh those worlds of trying to be both, communicating what the project is I'm looking to do, and then how that, directly connects without that just kind of being a, taken for granted sort of thing.
Yes, I so hear you. And I think that that's a huge challenge. I think that's a wonderful question. Thank you for sharing it. I think, right. It's such a short amount of space to communicate it. And I think this is where if it's connected, if it's an add-on, it would easily kind of show up as an add-on. And how do you actually use the imperative in your thinking and throughout a design? And to make sure that it's in there. The language is reflective of it would be one way, that you're using the language and the different areas of the imperative throughout your design. And then a little tip I have that I had shared with some scholars for something else recently is where it's with the imperative, if you highlight it or bold it or underline it, that helps to really promote or highlight your work and those things. I would say that that's something I do with when I was going up for tenure and promotion, to highlight or underline those key things so that faculty on my committee, who are very busy, and I don't know how long that they're certainly not spending as much time as I did and really putting all those efforts together, it makes it easy for the reader. I actually was just sharing it with somebody who's applying for PhD programs in that statement. And I think it's really might be a good tip for some people here too, to just highlight those. I think also, are there footnotes, are there connections? Is there something that, I already said the language fits, but to pop out those places and highlight those. Jimena?
Yeah, maybe I'll add maybe a couple of things. Still around the how, I think there may be some decisions that you want to make that you maybe link it to the imperative. Like I think the what is more tied to the big picture. So what you're trying to do, you can have a sentence or two to support that. But maybe as you propose your design, your questions, you can say, this decision is really based on this, all connected. Maybe break it down a little bit, because I do think that what I find helpful about the wheel is that, and even in reading this article by Morton, I read it and I highlighted all the different ways she was really applying the imperative, even though that was not a request. So it's embedded, it's really there. And I think that, so it's more like you maybe read a couple of articles that speak to you and see how those articles do the work, and then find a way to communicate that in some of your proposed plan. It could be who you're going to be working with, could be the topic, could be how you're going to flip the design, could be the values they're going to bring to the conversation. This woman really meant it when she said she wanted to invest in relationships. She did, I don't know, so many meetings, so many conversations, so many pictures, she really got to know these people. It was really a full, she invested a lot. Efficiency was not her calling. That was obvious. Some of us may not be able to do that, but I'm saying from the document, it's obvious that efficiency was not the calling. She really wanted to dig deeper. So maybe that's one way to think about it, is to pick a couple examples that mirror your quest and then see how they talk about it. Flo, you want to say something? You're mute.
Oh, we can't hear you still.
Mm.
I know, and the little button's not there, so I know you're not muted. And now you're muted, so there's something.
But you can
in the
unmute her.
system.
Yeah, I can.
She's unmuted.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Type.
Type.
She'll put it in the chat. Thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much.
Okay, great.
John, too, if you wanted to weigh in, feel free. Okay. What other questions do you have?
Maybe Julie wants to have some comments or suggestions or
Yes.
questions.
Yes.
I really appreciate being in this space today and the examples that you shared. And I was instantly distracted with the fascinating opportunity for the experience as you were talking about her interviewing and spending all this deep time. I wanted to know what the effect was.
Yeah, it's good.
So the research is one thing, but something that's really standing out to me about the linkages about the decolonization, about the imperative. I mean, as we know, just the fact of researching it, we're changing.
Sure.
Disrupting. And so thank you. Of course we know that, but
yeah, but we don't talk about it.
feels different. It just really feels different because of the thoughtfulness of the imperative. So thank you.
Well, I guess one word is like these journals don't give much room. I don't know even how she reduced what she did to these 10 pages of the journal. So I agree with you. And I think this is what we don't value in the academy. We don't value the impact of the research on people. We value the knowledge that we produce. So I think that's also another contradiction.
And we really should be making a difference with our research, right? I mean, all research is not really meant to sit on a shelf, but I think there's something different about the imperative and something different about actually living that through your action and making change and this reflective growth that it's going to evolve, that it's going to change, that it's going to make a difference, right? And it's not, it just long ago abandoning that I'm coming in as an outsider and doing research on, but it's in community with. And I think the imperative centering love and engagement really affords us the opportunity to live out in research the things that we really should be doing as researchers, no matter your paradigm or approach. Julie, thank you for that. And also thank you for your comment earlier about, I think that the computer was disrupting our space, right? Like we're kind of trying to disrupt research. So I appreciate that comment. Flo has some comments in the side. Flo was on the original committee that put the imperative together with our president, Dr. Stephen Quay, and Flo, also Sean, there were other people on the committee I know that were involved. I think Dan Swire was one of them, right? So what a important, wonderful gift. And I know it was at least a 3-president initiative over time. So knowing a little bit about the imperative, and we posted the link to the imperative with all the different supportive documents at the bottom, is part of what we want to ask people to think about, highlight, and Flo also talked about as one of the authors of the imperative. Please know that these components are not the only ones that could be a part of your research. They're likely things that we've missed. And as a constructivist, she said, I think truly making research a community effort is something higher education for the most part does not value. And then she offered that it was D.L. Stewart and Diane and Stephen and
the names are listed in the
Dan's and then Dre and others. Okay. Yeah. Just want to,
honor that.
Yes. John?
The only thing I might offer is I know you provided the link
Yes.
And you mentioned all the supporting documents, the document that's probably most relevant is the framework document.
Yeah. We put it at the
Right,
beginning.
so, and I think sometimes people think the strategic imperative is what's on the website, but really where it exists is in that framework document,
That's the one we need. Yes. Yeah.
the document to really read, and it's beautifully written.
Mhm.
No, it's a very
Mhm.
nice. Yeah.
Yes. 25 pages, right? That's
Yes.
that's
Good.
just the guiding document. It's
So,
really
Julie,
fun.
do you have any burning questions, or Reginald?
Yes, I thank you all so much for answering that question. I mean, I know this, this is always a reality in terms of trying to articulate ourselves in a very short, span of space. So I really appreciate the piece around highlighting and trying to maybe italicize and underlining particular pieces. And I agree, looking at the article that you all posted that does this beautifully as well. The other question I was going to ask was, so I mean, I got some more kind of like logistic, questions as I approach this deadline. So okay, so one of the questions most times, these sort of grants are looking for some sort of, what's the impact that it's going to have on a community. I'm assuming that like the under the proposal format, item 7 that asks about like campus level programming, performance, interactive exhibition, things like that. Is that sort of how I should be thinking about the impact factor? So like what might I actually sort of do? How might this research sort of augment, change something, add something that's adaptable to a particular campus or campus context?
Absolutely. So here's the design. And then that number 7 is really about the impact, the change. What's going to be changed? Is it a program that's going to be changed, or an event, or thinking, or exactly what kind of action do you imagine is going to come from it? And so we know you're going to be presenting at ACPA, and we hope that the action comes from the people who are in that space. So that's kind of given. You don't have to waste precious space on that, but think about what you want to have changed, or that influence. And that speaks to what Jimena was saying before about, really kind of what is that action piece, the thing that we're really changing structures, changing lives, and that impact that you're making on the world with your important research.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Great question. Do you have more?
One last question I have. So
Yes.
I know the number 12, about IRB approval. So is it that, so I have my IRB under review right now, but I have not, heard back just yet. I just submitted it a couple weeks ago. Is this something you're wanting, just kind of a, status of where things are with IRB? Is it more of a, needing to show that there's been an approval already, or what exactly might you be looking for in item 12?
To us, it's just making sure that everybody knows an IRB is required for this. And so if you're working on IRB, that's plenty. That's
fine.
that's not required that it's approved. Even if people are waiting for the grant to end up then putting in an IRB after, I will put in an IRB. I'm intending, so yours is already in the works. So just noting that there is perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, those are the only questions that I have.
Great questions. Really great. Julie, other questions or thoughts?
No, I just really appreciate being here today in this space and this opportunity. And this is exciting because it's really, we talk about the talk to talk, are you going to walk the walk? But when you're really able to say, we're going to take a hard look at this, and this is the lens, and the lens is not negotiable. I think that that's a powerful place to approach learning through research.
Yes.
Yeah, I like the way you put it, Julie. because I think what else I find helpful here is that maybe things that we value that we not always, but we often try to embody, they're kind of validated in this document. So for me, this is also nice. Like, wow, okay, I was not crazy when I pushed for this. Because a lot of the, these are really, if you center relationships, you have to honor these things. If you center racial justice, you have to honor these things. So the fact that we agree to center them in research, not just in pedagogy, to me, that's lovely, because we often say yes to pedagogy and classroom and not to research. So so that's, it feels very validating to have a document that that supports, validates these callings.
I think it's a good model for all of us, whether it's this grant or another grant, but that this is like the imperative is for our association. And I think it's a model for other associations. People are taking notice about the work that ACPA has done and it continues to do. And I think for all of us across the association, where is the imperative showing up in our lives, in our work, in the things we do? How are we living and breathing this commitment? And when we were reviewing proposals last year, we asked for the imperative, but I think a webinar like this is something that's new. We've added because of us wanting to figure out how to educate people about how to do it. And I think also be educated about how to do it. As I'm reading, yes, I think we're going to be educated with all the people who are doing this work throughout the field. And I think that's exciting to really make a change and that ripple effect. Thank you so much for that, Julie, and all of you for being in this space and giving us this opportunity to talk about the call. And it's a privileged place to be able to give money to important things. And
nice.
It is, and we'll do it every year we're able with ACPA. So, thank you.
You're calling from where?
Oh, I am currently in Alabama at Auburn University.
Okay.
Yes. I definitely appreciate you all for sharing. And I did reach out to a good friend of mine, TJ Stewart, who I believe was awarded the grant a couple of years ago. TJ has been huge support. And so I'm really looking forward to finishing up my proposal and submitting that to you all.
Excellent.
Great.
Excellent. We look forward to that and all the proposals. And yes, DJ presented last year at ACPA. So that's so great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Wednesday. No, happy Thursday. One day for Friday. I'm happy about that. Happy.